I will never forget the first time I noticed her, Lindiwe. She was one of those girls who didn't seem to try too hard. Smart, pretty, graceful, and so humble. At Amara College, we had our fair share of smart girls, but Lindiwe stood out. You know how in most African schools, beauty and brains rarely mix? Either you're the queen of the beauty pageant or the one who stays in the library, always with her nose buried in a book. But Lindiwe, she was the exception. It seemed like everyone admired her. Lindiwe walked through the college gates every morning, her uniform crisp, her hair neatly braided into a perfect knot at the back of her head. No one could miss her. Not because she was loud or sought attention, but because she exuded a kind of quiet confidence that others couldn't help but notice. The other students often whispered about her, but it wasn't in a mean way. They spoke of her beauty, of course, but also about her near-perfect academic record. And to be honest, Lindiwe made it look easy. It was clear that no matter what subject you put her in, she'd excel. Whether it was mathematics, history, or Igbo literature, her answers were always spot on. As a fellow student, I admired her from afar. I would see her sitting in the front row during lectures, always the first to raise her hand. Her answers would come out flawlessly, and you could tell that the lecturers were particularly fond of her. In fact, some of them would even go out of their way to give her additional attention. But it wasn't just the lecturers, even the students were fascinated by her. I'll never forget one day when we were in Professor Okafor's class, a gruff man known for his tough exams and no-nonsense attitude. The room was buzzing with nervous energy because we had an exam that afternoon. As usual, Lindiwe walked in with her calm demeanor, sitting down in the front. Her signature style, a neat ponytail and that soft smile that made everyone around her feel at ease. I, on the other hand, was a bundle of nerves. Halfway through the lecture, Professor Okafor paused and looked over at her. Lindiwe, have a question? He asked, a hint of softness in his voice that I hadn't heard before. Lindiwe's eyes twinkled as she answered, and I could see the admiration in the professor's eyes. The whole class went quiet. After the class, I overheard some of the students whispering about Lindiwe. Did you see how Professor Okafor was looking at her? One of them said, it's like she can do no wrong. I didn't think much of it at first. It was just Lindiwe being Lindiwe, right? But the next week, something strange happened. It was lunchtime and I was sitting under one of the huge mango trees outside the college cafeteria. Lindiwe was sitting nearby with her friends, but I noticed something different about her. For the first time, she wasn't the quiet, focused girl I knew. She was laughing, but it wasn't the usual easy laugh. There was a hint of something else in her eyes. Her friend Amma leaned over and whispered something to her. I couldn't hear their conversation, but I could see that Lindiwe was suddenly quiet. She stared down at her phone and typed something quickly. Later that day, as I was heading back to my dorm, I bumped into Lindiwe by accident. She looked up at me, her face flushed. Hey, how's it going? I asked. She gave me a small smile, but didn't seem like herself. Fine, she said, her voice tight. Listen, I wanted to ask you something. Sure, I replied, noticing her hesitation. She took a deep breath, as if gathering her thoughts. Do you ever wonder if life would be easier if you used your looks or charm to get ahead? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I blinked in surprise. What do you mean? I asked, unsure where this was going. She hesitated again before answering, her eyes darting to the side. You know, if you smiled more at the lecturers, maybe they treat you differently, give you better grades. It's just a thought. At first I thought she was joking, but the look on her face told me she wasn't. Lindiwe wasn't someone who took shortcuts. She was known for her hard work, and I couldn't imagine her using anything other than that to succeed. Yet here she was, asking me if it was worth it to use her beauty to gain more favor from the teachers. I didn't know how to respond. The thought felt wrong, but at the same time, something about it made me think. Maybe there was truth to what she was saying. After all, who didn't want an easier path? Especially in a place like Amara College, where everyone was scrambling to secure their future. The next day, Lindiwe came to class with a subtle change. Her uniform was still perfect, but there was a little more polish to her look. Her makeup was on point, nothing too flashy, but enough to catch the eye. When she walked into Professor Okafor's class, I could swear I saw a slight shift in the way the professor looked at her. For the next few weeks, the change in Lindiwe became more apparent. She began to rely less on her books and more on her appearance. I catch her glancing at the professors during breaks, laughing a little too loudly at their jokes. And slowly, her grades started to soar even higher without much effort on her part. It seemed like every time she smiled at a lecturer, she'd walk away with a little more favor in her pocket. But soon, it wasn't just the lecturers who were noticing. Her friends started whispering behind her back. Some of them impressed, but others, like me, felt uneasy. What had happened to Lindiwe? The girl who had always worked hard for everything? It didn't feel right. Then came the day it all came crashing down. I was walking with Lindiwe to our next class when we overheard a group of students talking behind us. I couldn't make out everything they were saying, but then I heard it. She's sleeping with the lecturers. I swear, no one's that lucky with grades. My heart sank. I wanted to turn around and defend her, but I could tell by the look in her eyes that she had heard the same thing. That evening, I found her sitting alone by the river that ran through the campus, her feet dipped in the water. Lindiwe, are you okay? I asked, sitting beside her. She shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. I've made a mistake. I thought it would make things easier, but now I see it's ruining everything. The rumors, the gossip. It's like I've lost myself. She took a deep breath, wiping her tears. I just wanted to get ahead without working so hard, but now it feels like everyone's watching me, waiting for me to fall. Lindiwe's life at Amara College would never be the same again. The rumors spread like wildfire, and no amount of smiles or favors could make them go away. In the end, she realized the price of perfection. It wasn't just about grades or appearances, but the respect she had lost along the way. And for me, watching her struggle through that, I learned a valuable lesson. Success built on shortcuts will always come with consequences. Even in a place like Amara College, where reputation meant everything, it was integrity that truly mattered.